I left Merritt Island in 1967 and went to what they called the Naval Inshore Operations Training Center for training to prepare to go to Vietnam as part of the mobile. At that time, it was a river patrol force. My assignment was to a support ship. These were LSTs converted from the Second World War, and their job was to support the patrol craft that were patrolling the rivers at that time. Most of the action then was in the large rivers. When I say large, they're big rivers, the Mekong, Bassac, things like that. I was there for TET in 68.
Well, you weren't taking an LST up those rivers,
Sure.
were you? Oh, you were?
Oh, sure. And I was there in TET. During TET, we actually provided fire support for in a town called Vinh Long. The town had been overrun, and the only people that had remained in their place were the SEALs. They had a compound over there, and they maintained their compound during that whole time. And we provided fire support for the Vietnamese Army and the river patrol boats that were attached to our ship. I spent 12 months on there, actually. I was in charge of the maintenance operation. We had 6 people. We provided the supervision and the maintenance capability. We could lift the boat, take the engines out if it needed to be. We did hull repairs, patched holes. They were fiberglass boats, 31 foot long, river patrol force. I stayed there 14 months. I received the Navy Commendation Medal for my what I considered my job during the Tet Offensive with the Combat V. We used to go out on patrol sometimes with the guys because it gets a little boring after a while. And I had a bunch of young kids. I was like probably the 3rd oldest person on the ship. Had young officers. Lieutenant was in command, Lieutenant J.G. In fact, I got in trouble. We went to Subic for upkeep for 2 weeks, and we had a ship's party, and when the XO came up, I asked him for, me and this other chief were tending bar, and I asked the XO for his ID card, and he got a little upset with me. Mm-hmm. But it was a good ship, good command, very stressful, a lot of hours.
Did you sleep and eat on board, or?
Yeah, we slept and ate on the ship. We were assigned to the ship. When I left there, I came back to the USS Hunley, which was another submarine tender, and I was an assistant division officer for auxiliaries and hull repair. And I spent a year on there, which was, when I came back, it just seemed something was missing. It's hard to explain. At that time, there was a lot of people who had no real combat experience in the military, Navy particularly. What they considered to be these major problems were, to me, kind of a, okay, we'll get it done thing, you know. And I got a little frustrated, so after about a year, let me regress. To go back, my wife got pregnant while I was on that tour. And but after about a year, I decided that I was really just getting kind of frustrated. In fact, I was actually thinking about leaving the military. So I put in for another tour in Vietnam. I went back to the Naval Inshore Operations Training Center and went through the full. They had a program going on that Nixon had instigated then. It was called OCTAL, Accelerated Turnover to the Vietnamese. We were doing exactly what they're doing now in Afghanistan. We were preparing them to take over our work. I went through 12 weeks of school there. I had 12 weeks of Vietnamese language training, 4 weeks of, because we didn't carry corpsmen, we had 4 weeks of medical, combat medicine, boat operations, small arms, patrol tactics. I went through SEER training. I don't know if you know what that is. That's escape and evasion training. They actually put you in a prisoner of war camp scenario for about 3 days, and the other 2 days is escape and evasion type stuff, and pathfinding and things like that. It was pretty interesting. We actually had people fail out of that, which really amazed me.
Out of the
Out of SEER training, yeah. If you failed SEER training, you didn't go. They wouldn't. You failed out. You flunked out of the program. Most of the guys had a problem. They had these small boxes they stuffed you in and closed you up. A lot of people were claustrophobic and didn't know it, I guess, or had never been in that experience. Some of it was kind of actually comical, and you always had in the back of your mind that this is only a training exercise. You know, they bumped you around a little bit and did little things to you, but basically it was just to see how you would react. Mm-hmm. At that time, I was a chief petty officer, and I was a senior guy, so I took a lot of flack. We also went to small arms training at a reserve army base in California, where we learned about all the good things we would be dealing with: 50 caliber machine guns and heavy weapons, 105s, all that kind of good stuff.
So were you deployed again?
Yeah, I went back to Vietnam in February of 1970. I was with River Patrol Force. The River Squadron was 572. It was 10 boats. I was a patrol officer. When I went there, they had talked to me about going into the maintenance, and I told them I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to be a patrol officer, so I was a patrol officer. I had the responsibility for a 2-boat patrol. We patrolled about once every 3 days. I had about 99 patrol missions as a U.S. Navy patrol officer. Was involved in 10 firefights. Our main mission was interdiction. Did a lot of night ambushes, but what our main job was to keep the rivers open. And we didn't see these huge battles like they saw up north. Most of our stuff was little skirmishes. The explosive device of the day for the Viet Cong was what they call B-40s or B-50 rockets. I actually gave you a picture of the ones that we had captured. They were fired from homemade launchers that were actually tin cans wrapped with wire and fired electrically with flashlight batteries. They would put them out in at that river I was patrolling at that time was called Song Dak, the Ong Dak River. It was about 50 feet wide and run, I don't know how many miles, long ways. At that time, it was all free fire zone, just about, except in the town of Song and Dak itself. That means if we got shot at, we could fire back without getting anybody's permission. We also had good support. We had a Navy helicopter squadron that supported us. It was 2 helicopters, Sea Wolves they called them. They operated off the land, and then when the repair ship came in, they would operate off the repair ship. And we had a lot of good support from the Air Force, and the Navy had the OV-10s. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're close support aircraft. They can devastate. I got, on one patrol, we got hit with a couple of rockets and some heavy machine gun fire. It was 51 caliber machine guns, which is about a 1/2-inch bullet. And it just happens that a pair of these OV-10s were patrolling our sector, and they heard the action going on over the radio between me and the control center, and they came up on the freak and asked if they could be of assistance. And we told them, yeah, sure. So we put some smoke on what we thought was the area, and in about 30 seconds, the tree line was completely demolished. I mean, it was just really a devastating thing. We also had what they call monitors. They were part of the Mobile Riverine Force. Mobile Riverine Force was actually an amphibious force. It had monitors which were converted landing craft with 105s mounted on them. Some of them had flamethrowers, some of them had water cannons. They had minesweeping boats and that. We had a monitor attached to us, and he could put in either indirect or direct fire. And when he did indirect fire, you give him his coordinates, and the gunner's mate that was in charge of the gun would actually sit on the barrel with a compass, and that's how they would aim that thing. So we usually back off a little bit when they fired for us, because it wasn't always that accurate. It was effective, and that was what was important.